Hey friend, welcome back to the Care Collective podcast, a space where we talk about the real, unfiltered experience of caregiving and the parts that don't always get said out loud that so many of us are carrying. This podcast exists to help you feel seen, supported, and a little less alone, whether you're in the middle of caregiving, just stepping into it, or trying to find yourself again after everything is taken from you. Because caregiving isn't just about what you do for someone else, it's about what it does to you. And today's conversation is one I think so many of you are going to really resonate with on a deeper level. Because we're not just talking about the logistics of caregiving, we're talking about the emotional weight and the complicated relationships. I know I get so many DMs from you guys asking especially about toxic relationships with the person you care for, or maybe you have past trauma that you are carrying from your relationship, and now you find yourself taking care of this person, and it's really difficult. In this episode, I'm sitting down with someone who walked into what they thought was going to be a routine doctor's appointment and walked out of it the primary caregiver for their mother with Alzheimer's. And what unfolds from this is not just a story about caregiving, but it's about that healing, forgiveness, and the inner work that you really have to do that no one prepares you for. And sometimes you have to do it sooner than you maybe wanted to. We talk about what it looks like to care for someone when your relationship has always been complicated, and how to let go of the past without pretending it didn't hurt you, and how to find that peace in a role that can so easily consume you. If you've ever felt like caregiving has taken pieces of who you are, or like you're constantly trying to balance showing up for someone else while not losing yourself in the process, this episode is for you. Well, thanks for coming to talk to me today. I would love to just kind of hear at the start of this kind of more about your story and, how we're here talking to each other today, because you said you had a lot of experience with caregiving and kind of how it impacted your life and got you to where you're at today, and even changing your career, right, because of your
Absolutely.
care story. So why don't you just start by taking a second to just tell us who you are and what your experience has been like.
Sure. My name is Sheri Yarbrough. Before I became a family caregiver, I was an organizational change consultant. So I ran around and worked with organizations that were experiencing some change, whether it was something that was coming down the pike or whether something had happened and they were just struggling with implementation issues. And I mostly focused on education and not for profit organizations. So that's what I was doing when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia. And it was a shock.
Yeah.
I still stumble when I think about it because on the day she was diagnosed, I walked into what I thought was going to be a routine doctor's appointment, and I walked out to as the primary caregiver to a person living with Alzheimer's.
Right.
I had known since I was 24 years old that I would probably be the sibling to care for our parents. But at 24, I had no idea what that was going to mean. That was back in the 80s, a long
Right.
time ago. And so I'd heard the words Alzheimer's dementia, but it was not the level of public awareness and understanding was so totally not what it is now.
Right.
So when I was 24 and I thought, okay, I'm going to do this, I had no knowledge that this is the condition that I'd be navigating my way through.
Right.
Also, on the day that my mom was diagnosed, my mother and I had come to this place of understanding. We understood that we got along best when each of us had our own layer. So, as long as she was living in her spot and I was living in mine, we could come together, do things, and enjoy each other's company. And when we were done, we were done. We could just be done, you
Right.
know. And it was our way of dealing with a very difficult relationship. What made our relationship so difficult wasn't that either one of us did anything directly to the other person. Our relationship was complicated by spillover from the relationship my mother had with my grandmother.
Right.
And my grandmother was not kind to my mother at all. And she felt that it was appropriate to put verbal footprints on her anytime she felt. And as I grew up, I thought that was wrong.
Yeah.
And so my mom tried to bring that into our relationship. And when she would do it, I would push back as hard as I could. And she always felt that I didn't respect her because I wouldn't tolerate what she tolerated from my grandmother.
Mm.
And from my mom's perspective, she felt she was being respectful to my grandmother.
Mm.
And I thought that her behavior was not respectful and should not be
Yeah.
respected. So that created a lot of tension between mom and me for a lot of years. So we learned how to deal with that tension by living apart. We could talk to each other on the phone, we
Right.
could engage in activities, and we had this public persona that everything was okay with us. But there were still those times when it would bubble up and we'd have just a real
Right.
conflict. So on the day she was diagnosed, and I realized that the mechanism that we had used to get along well for 25 years,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't use anymore. I was lost.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's a lot. And I definitely want to hear more about your experience later as well. But if we go back to when you were getting that diagnosis, because a lot of people they have to work to get their Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis, right? Like it is this big long process. So can you talk about kind of what that meant for you emotionally to take on to hear that in that moment, and especially because you weren't expecting it, that I'm sure that was a lot of stress.
it was. I still stumble when I think about it.
Yeah.
It was kind of a unique experience
Right.
in that my mother and I are both Spelman alumna, and the doctor at the time was a Morehouse alumnus.
Mm,
So and he had been my dad's doctor, and he became her doctor after my dad passed away.
I see.
So there was a long history there. And so there was a relationship between them, and there was also a relationship between he and I.
Mm,
So when he delivered the diagnosis, I think because there was that underlying relationship, he felt comfortable in just laying it on the table.
mm,
But going back to what I said about we had this public persona where
right.
everything was okay, he had absolutely no idea about the backstory. And so on that day, all I could do was just say, well, okay, this is where we are. And as soon as I could, I retreated to my favorite thinking spot on Lake Michigan
Mhm.
because I had to process this. Yes, I knew that I would be the family caregiver, but I had no idea that I would be walking through an unknown, unpredictable disease.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a lot you have to learn in that moment.
Exactly. So, um, thinking about our history
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that despite our history, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want anything bad to happen to her. I
Right.
had to really think this through, and I said, okay. So after several hours of thinking and a very long walk,
Mm-hmm.
I decided, okay, well, I'm going to make the commitment to keeping her safe. And if I can keep my focus on those activities of daily living, make sure that she's safe in that space, keep our emotions out of this,
Right.
we can work through that. Yeah, well, it was easier said than done. I wound up having to move back into my childhood home, and it
Mm,
wasn't long before our upheavals and conflicts started. And I was living in a place where I didn't want to live, experiencing something that I really had always hated experiencing,
right.
but I made a commitment, and so there we were. And so I would say for about the first 18 months, we did our usual thing, which was what I
Mm,
call the cycle of anger. Something would happen, we'd get angry, we'd stay angry, then just sort of let it dissipate and never address what was making us angry. So
right.
there we were in that cycle all over again. And I say 18 months because in the middle of this, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm,
So I was faced with a choice.
yeah.
Breast cancer was something that could quickly shorten someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to choose whether I wanted to continue living as we had been living or whether I wanted to make a decision or whether I wanted to live differently
Right.
in that time that we had.
Mm,
And I chose to make the decision to live differently.
yeah. No, I think that's something I was hearing in my conversation earlier today with someone else is how much of the caregiving process really is more focused on yourself than it is the other person, in the ways that you have to put yourself first. You have to do the hard work to learn anger management skills, learn patience, learn so many different things about yourself to be able to fully show up for that person and to be there for them, right? So can you talk us through some of that, whether you want to call it inner work, whether, whatever you kind of call it in your own words, what were kind of some of the tools and techniques that mentally and emotionally helped you navigate a lot of these challenges?
I think the most important thing was self reflection.
Mm,
And I really had to challenge myself. It's
yeah,
like, do I want to use whatever time we have the way in that cycle of anger?
right.
Do I want to continue having that public persona? Or
Mm,
do I really want to work on this and build something that's
mm,
comfortable for me? And so I had, and that was my choice. And so the first thing I had to do was I had to forgive both of us.
mm,
I had to forgive her for the things that she did, and I had to forgive myself for the way that I had responded.
mm-hmm,
And it was in that moment that I said, we've got to get this past out of the way.
mm,
We can't, our past is always with us.
right,
It's like our platform. So it's always there. But how do we want to live with that past? And do we want to let the past be so much in control that we're not in control of where we are in the moment?
right.
So creating that forgiveness for both of us was essential, was the primary
Mm,
tool for getting through that. And then in that space, I had to find patience because this wasn't to say that there weren't still upheavals and things. Finding that patience to say, no, let's create a normal relationship. In any relationship, there's going to be challenge.
yeah.
So let's just be patient with that basic reality so that we can move through where we are
Mm-hmm,
in that, in finding that patience of the moment, it helped me learn how to make good decisions going forward. And so that life process became the foundation for the tool that I developed in my book called Praxis for Care.
mm,
We all have a past. We're all going to experience things right here now in the present, but then there's that moment when your present becomes your past, and now you're in your future.
right.
So we have to have that acceptance. And it's not necessarily resignation of, well, this is all it is, so be it. No, it's about accepting that something has happened and you've got to make decisions about how you're going to move forward with what has happened. So
Right.
that became part of the that became part of my praxis for care. And then it, we all have to think about what we value most. So the platform that I created for this, what I call the fulcrum for giving care, which is our past, getting it out of the way with forgiveness, have our present that we're dealing with patience, and then
Mm,
our future with acceptance. It has to be stabilized on a set of values, and the
mm,
four that I chose were honor, trust, being honest, and respect.
mm,
Honor is the value that you give to the relationship.
mm-hmm,
Trust lets you know what's true in a relationship. Being honest is you're facing what it is. You
right.
may not like it, you may not agree, but when you're honest, that's what it is. And then
Right.
respect is that space of treating yourself and the other person to the best of your ability.
Mm,
And then you have to have an anchor in this, which I use self efficacy, which is that psychological state that allows you to stand up after you've been knocked down. So when you put all those three things together, you're operating like a teeter totter. You've got to give some to yourself, some to your loved one, some to yourself, some to
mm-hmm.
your loved one. And that's what became what I call the praxis for care.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's a good image of how it really is a balance and it's a lot of things you have to work on. And I'd love to hear too, like what your recommendations are for how we navigate those relationships with other people. Because I think these are good things to work on for yourself. But are there conversations that you had, or like effective ways to communicate some of these things to others, like these values that you have, making that known, asking the other person, what's our mutual understanding, right? Like, what do you value, so I understand how you navigate the world and how I navigate the world and where our mutual ground is. So what recommendations do you kind of have for people to navigate that
I
with the other person?
that it's important to just be open and have those conversations and
Yeah.
to really that self-reflection of what do I really value? What do
Right.
I really value? And what do I want to value in this relationship?
Right.
So you have to start there first and create those conversations. And
Hmm.
they're not easy conversations. Something that I learned on this journey just because of what it is. My mom doesn't have the capacity to have those conversations with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to change regardless of whether she could change or not.
Right.
And I think that's something that's important for people to recognize is to think, really pay attention to what you value. And if the person for whom you're caring, or if you're in this care relation with whom you're in this caring relationship,
Mm-hmm.
sees things differently, you have to reach that point of, well, okay, I will respect your choice, you respect mine. And that's sometimes as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can have these wonderful conversations and people think through, because sometimes people don't realize how hurtful their actions are.
Right.
And so in that space of being honest, it's about talking about that. Not in a way that is going to hurt the other person or shame the other person or anything like that.
Right.
Being honest doesn't mean creating more pain.
Right.
It's not an opportunity to get even.
Right.
It's an opportunity to say, this is what's happened with us, and we have to be honest about things that didn't work. If
Mm-hmm.
we're going to do this, we've got to think about how to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to value each other
Mm-hmm.
with honor, and we have to be able to trust that what we're experiencing with each other is true.
Yeah, no, I'd love that. And I think something that I've learned, and if you're anything like me, I'm sure you would agree with this as well, but it's taken me some time to learn that all of these things and feelings and what I experience, it's not common sense or it's not obvious to other people. And you would think that it should be known that, okay, somebody shouldn't say that, that's offensive. Somebody shouldn't do that, it's offensive. But you're really the only one that knows what's going on in your head, right? You're the only one that knows how this thing is affecting you, how your day to day life, what's going on. And so the more you can communicate, which is really hard and it's a skill to learn how to communicate those things, but the more you can be open through the whole process, your feelings are just as valid as your mom's feelings as you're navigating this together, right? That's a lot of what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And and that's why self-reflection is so important, because sometimes we're not always as honest with ourselves
Hmm.
as we should be.
Yeah.
We sometimes tell ourselves that what we're experiencing, maybe I'm overanalyzing, maybe I'm being oversensitive or whatever. And if you are being oversensitive, that's okay, because now you have to face the fact that, okay, why does this bother me so much? Why am I so sensitive to this? And so be honest about that sensitivity so that you can find
Mm.
healing.
Yeah, which I think even just getting to the root of why you feel something, that takes so much time sometimes and a lot of work and a lot of self reflection, as you said. So I think that's a really good invitation for that. For you, do you find that self reflection for you, is it come in the form of, I know some people like journaling. Is it more of a meditative kind of thing for you? What do you kind of use to?
It's multidynamic.
Mhm.
Sometimes it happens when I'm doing my favorite self care thing, which is
Yeah.
swimming.
Yes.
Sometimes it's meditative when I'm just get in a very quiet space and ask myself, okay, what's going on and how do I need to walk through this? Sometimes it's when I'm listening to my favorite songs and certain lyrics hit me in a certain way.
Right.
being self-reflective, it's multidimensional.
Mm.
And you can find it in any place. I think that sometimes too people get caught into it should be this way.
Mm.
Sometimes it is journaling.
Right.
But then there are also those other times when I'm just sort of reflecting, and then after I've had that time to think it through, that's when I can really write out my thoughts.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of
So
sense.
I want to go back to something that I said earlier about
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is about healing.
Mm.
That's the only way you can get your past out of the way is to let it heal.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you have those wounds and you think that they've healed, but they haven't, you can't move forward
Mm-hmm.
because you're still carrying that.
Yeah.
So forgiveness is about healing. And it's about healing. So for us, in forgiving her for her actions and forgiving myself for those reactions,
Right.
that was that healing space. We're not going to do those things anymore,
Right.
regardless of what happened. I'm not going to respond the way that I had. Because if I
Right.
respond the way that I had always responded, then the wound's going to open up again. And I
Right.
didn't want that. So it's important to think, because sometimes people think when you say forgiveness, it means that you're putting away what happened.
Yeah.
You're putting it away. It's all done, over. You never speak of it. No,
That would be nice if it could be that.
exactly. No, but you do, again, it's about creating that value for the relationship. If you did hurtful things before
Right.
and you want to create new value, you have to be honest about the fact that those hurtful things happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay attention to what happened so
Right.
that you can heal them and you can make different choices moving forward.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. I think that forgiveness is a big key, and I think the world would be a much better place if people would focus on healing themselves, on forgiving themselves just as much as other people. I think that's a quality that you don't really see too often as valued as it should be, you know.
Exactly. And I think that forgiveness is one of those really complicated emotions
Mm-hmm.
because how do I get past someone having done something to me?
Right.
And why do I have to be the bigger person? Why do I have to get past this?
Right.
Why do I have to let this person go?
Right.
They did the wrong. I didn't. Why do I have to be the one? And you have to be the one because you are the one the only person who can heal you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the fact of the matter at the end of the day. That's all you can control. That's all you can do is heal yourself when everything else is going on.
Exactly. And it's up to you to decide whether you want to be healed
Mm-hmm.
and do it for yourself.
Right.
Maybe that person, for whatever reason, may or may not be responsive to it. So
Right.
then what?
Right. Yeah. No, I
Are
hear
you
you.
just going to continue as you had been? Or do you want to say, okay,
Yeah.
that's your choice, but my choice is to heal?
Yeah. No, I love that. So I guess another question for you then too that I think you already kind of hinted at, but what are some other areas that have been important for you to focus on yourself and have been forms of self care for you? I know you mentioned swimming is one. Self reflection has been good for you. What are some other outlets that you have found have been helpful for you as a caregiver?
I learned on this journey, I have a motto
Mm.
that I learned on this journey, and that is caregiving is what you do for your loved one, giving care is what you do for both of you.
Mm.
And so at the beginning of our journey, my focus was on taking care of the things and doing things that she could no longer do for herself. When breast cancer barged in,
Right.
I found myself making decisions and taking actions the way she would if she could,
Mm.
because we're 18 months into this dementia diagnosis. So
Right.
she could not process the
Mm.
complex medical information that was coming at her. So
Right.
that became my responsibility. And there's a story that I tell in the book. I'd done my research, and the first surgeon, it was like, what you're proposing it's not a good thing, and
Mm.
I don't think that's going to be good for her. So I did some research and I found some more information. So, and I could tell after the appointment that she was pretty upset and confused. She just really couldn't get wrap her brain around it. So
Mm-hmm.
I was so proud of myself. Oh my goodness. I had done my research and I found other answers. And so I decided to sit down and have a mature, logical, rational conversation with her
Yeah.
about her treatment and how I would support whatever she wanted to do. And she looked at me and she gave me her little steely eyed, no nonsense look and said, "What would you do?" Well, that was not a question I was expecting or prepared to answer. But then again, knowing her, looking back, I should have expected that question.
Yeah.
And, in that moment, all I could say was, well, I'd have the surgery because I would want to get the cancer out of my body. But as far as the rest, I don't know enough to
Right.
say which way we should go. And that was okay for her.
Mm-hmm.
That was okay. And I said, but I'll keep looking. And so that her question, though, it haunted me the rest of the night through the next morning. It was just dogging me. What would you? And it changed from what would you do to
Mm-hmm.
what would you do? So I had to think about if this were my situation, what would I do?
Right.
And so, oh, it's like I would fight. And so I had to build that space for her to fight to the best of her ability.
Right.
So at that point, my focus shifted from doing things for her in the appropriate way to making decisions and taking actions the way she would if she
Mm.
could. And over after a few years of that, something really interesting happened. I realized how happy I was in seeing that I had been instrumental in giving her quality of life.
Mm.
So that's where the second part of my motto comes in of caregiving is what you do for your loved one. Giving care is what you do for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Making those decisions that way, I was doing something for myself as well. And I
Right.
was giving myself that space not to have the regret rocks in my life backpack. And I
Right.
know you wanted to talk about that. So tell me a little bit more about what you'd like to hear on that.
Yeah, no, I loved your concept of what you talked about as far as the way that I see it, and you can totally grab from what I say. If I'm misunderstanding, you can correct my understanding of what you were saying. But it was almost a sense of trying to remember who you are at the core, because you won't be a caregiver forever. Like that's it's going to be temporary. Maybe it'll last years, maybe it'll last months for some people. All sorts of different care experiences people have, but you have to choose what you're going to take away from the experience with you. And I believe you shared with me that, you that's when you hit that pivotal moment of like, I want to be able to, have peace about this and not be stuck on these negative feelings that I could have forever about this situation. So kind of how did you come to that conclusion, and what are some things you kind of recommend to other people to stay focused on doing the work you need to do to make sure you can take away the good parts from the situation, right? And still be
Oh,
your own
absolutely.
person outside of this experience.
And like I said, it was that evolution
Right.
of making decisions and taking actions that she would if she could, and
Right.
realizing, hey, I did a good job in this, and that I'm getting something out of her satisfaction as well.
Right.
I don't think I realized how much that had happened until several years later. It was like, whoa, you're okay.
Yeah.
And I helped you be okay. And so I could embrace the fact that in those moments, I did the very best I could.
Mm.
I'm a human being. I've made my mistakes. I make small mistakes on a daily basis. Overcooked vegetables is one of my number one mistakes that I make on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But being in that space of I did a good job.
Yeah.
I did a good job in the moment. I'm in the moment. I used the information that I had to make the best decision I could at that
Hmm.
time. And I also think that in this space of walking through Alzheimer's dementia, my mom is in a place where that's all she can do is live in the moment.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
If she's hungry and irritable, you take
Yes.
care of the hunger, you get
Yeah.
rid of the irritability, and as far as she's concerned, life is all good again.
Yeah.
She can't regret her past. She can't worry about her future. Everything is right here, right now. And so being in a space where that's all you can do, it's unfortunate that I had to learn that very powerful lesson in the presence of a really awful disease.
Right.
But it's like that's all you have. Right here, right now, what are you going to do?
Right.
And how are you going to use this moment to the best of your abilities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's the core of it, and I think it's really easy, especially when you're in a long term situation, to forget that, right? Because you're stuck in it day in day out, and then, like you said, you look back at it now, and you're like, wow, I'm in a much better place. I wish I could have, you know, gone back and learned some of these things sooner. I'm sure.
And I share that with people. It's like that's really all you get is that
Right.
moment.
Right.
Embrace it, regardless of how challenging that moment is. Embrace it
Right.
so that you can make the decision on how the next moment that's going to come, and there will be,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you're breathing, you're going to get another moment.
Yeah.
So, how are you going to make that moment that is yet to come the best it can be with the decision that you make right here and now?
Right, right. Yeah, no, I get that. And I think that's the other thing, is that every single day is going to be so different too, right?
And for caregivers, we our lives sometimes change to the place where we have to do daily routines.
Mm-hmm.
So, depending on what illness or accident your loved one has had, there are certain things that have to happen every day.
Right,
And sometimes we get so caught in that repetition
right.
that we forget that, yeah, I have to do this thing every day. I have to wash the laundry every day. I have to clean out a catheter every day.
Mm,
We get so focused on that and sometimes we're struggling with how we're feeling about having to do that repetition every day
right.
that we forget that those are just moments in the day. What other moments do you have
Mm,
that you can choose to do something else?
right. Yeah. No, I think that's great advice too. So, if you could, looking back at all of your experience, and I know you've kind of shared a lot of different things that you wish you had learned, but looking back, if there's something that you could give as a piece of advice to somebody if they were stressed out, trying to navigate their caregiving journey and feeling really overwhelmed, what kind of advice would you give them for where they're at?
We've all heard the saying, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in taking this journey through Alzheimer's dementia, I'm walking through something that can't be transformed.
Mm,
So, when life gives you a lemon, you flavor your life with its juice.
mm,
I love the TV series Chopped, and one of the things
yeah.
that you often hear the judges go, it needs more acid.
Yeah.
It needs some acid to cut through that flavor, some lemon juice or some lime juice just
Mm,
to brighten it up. I thought of how I talk about when life gives you lemons, flavor your life with the juice.
mm,
It's about sometimes you can't change it,
yeah.
but you can take that thing that an ordinary, some circumstance might seem bitter or sour
Yeah. No, I love
and use it to give your life some flavor.
right. And I think it's the way that I see it too is you're not, yeah, you're embracing it. You're not trying to change it. You're not trying to throw a bunch of sugar on it and say, well, let me make it a candied lemon because that's all I can take, right? Like you're saying, this is lemon. This is how it is. I'm going to adapt everything else around it, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's a good thing to keep in mind for a lot of people because I think, you could apply this to the stages of grief, right? Acceptance. Like, I think that's a key part that I'm sure you experience this as well. If you're stuck kind of grieving even what your old life was, or if you're preemptively grieving a parent because, as they decline, maybe they're not going to be the person that they were 5 years into it. So there's lots of different aspects of grieving in this
Oh,
stage. So
abs-
I think just learning to accept it where it's at and then make the best that you can with it and find joy in
exactly.
different ways, and that's all you can do, right?
Exactly. And you have to embrace those moments for what they are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, oh no, I'm never upset. There are times when my mom is sleeping peacefully and I'll look at her and she's 97.
Yeah.
And I know that one morning I'm going to walk into that room and I'm going to think that she's sleeping peacefully, but she's not asleep. I know that's going to happen. So I have to be honest with myself and say, okay, well, how do you feel when you know that's going to happen?
Yeah.
And give myself that space and that grace to say, okay, that's a feeling that you're having. It's not happening right now, but you can still embrace that feeling, work it through, take your deep breath,
Yeah.
and then, okay, so what are you going to do with this day? Okay, she's
Right.
still here. So what you going to do with this day so that you can have a memory that you want to carry?
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's the difficult part, obviously, but the beautiful part about it as well is it really does allow you to focus on making the most of every moment and enjoying it, because I think that is a very hard skill to learn in general. But I think again, seeing the amount of personal growth that you have through all of it is what makes all of it worth it as well too. You know, definitely helping the other person. That's a huge motivator, right? For a lot of people, especially and taking care of themselves so that they can show up for others. But I think even just seeing how you grow as a person and how you change and the things that you learn and can apply to every other facet of your life is a blessing and an opportunity in and of itself.
Absolutely. And something else that I've learned on this journey is that we don't have a choice in what life gives us,
Yeah.
but we do have a choice in how we live what we've gotten.
Hmm. Right.
So that goes back to that space where it's like, okay, am I going to choose to use whatever time we get the way we had been in a way that I didn't like, that I never liked? Or am I going to do the work to do something different?
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. One other question for you as well. What resources have you found to be helpful in building a community, having support around you, whether that comes in an online form, you know, if you found connection in other groups, if it's been like in person things, what kind of things would you have you considered like a part of your community that have been helpful for you?
Because my journey started before COVID,
Yeah,
well, and before we even knew that there was such a thing as COVID,
right.
I started building in-person relationships,
Mm-hmm.
built and living in Chicago, we have two National Institutes of Health
Mm-hmm.
designated Alzheimer's centers.
Right,
So connecting with them and connecting with them, meeting people, building a network around that,
right.
having an opportunity to, because they're both of them are research hospitals, having an opportunity to meet researchers and ask questions that I had,
Yeah.
you know, that was extremely important. I also have a therapist that I've had for a
Mm-hmm.
very long time. She is my neutral person that helps when I just need to say something
Yeah.
and have someone listen. And sometimes I don't want help. I just need to express what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I say that judiciously because sometimes I don't want help. I just need a moment to vent that out in a
Mm-hmm.
place where no one's going to try to help me or give me good suggestions.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a
Sometimes
key.
I don't want or need a suggestion. I just need space
Someone to
to
listen and yeah.
release what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of power in being able to verbalize how you feel, especially. So that's where I think the therapy comes into place, right? Is being able to talk about how you feel out loud. Because I know I'm the kind of person that I build a lot of things in my head and I build a lot of things that are going on. And then the minute that I can talk about it, I'm like, okay, now I've processed how I feel, I can move on, right? Like that was all I needed to move forward kind of thing. And definitely there's lots of times you don't need a solution, you don't need somebody to step in and help you. It's just that space that you're talking about, because I think that definitely that goes a long way in helping people just anything they're going through, not even related to caregiving, right? Like I'm sure your mom also needs space sometimes just to say, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm feeling. Not that she wants you to fix anything or do anything for her, but yeah, that's kind of how things go.
Exactly. So I talk about having teams.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot do this by yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
must have a team. And so you have your professional team
Right.
that includes medical personnel and all that. But then
Right.
you also have to have your personal team. And so whether it's a therapist, whether it's the people that you meet when you go to the walking group, or
Right.
they may not be fully aware of everything that you're doing, but you have these communities, and I say communities
Yeah.
because as human beings we have interests
Yeah.
in lots of places. So find those spaces that give you joy, and at different times. I think people sometimes get stuck because there's so much information and so many good tips
Right.
that we lose sight of who we are. And yeah, those tips are good, but are those tips that are good for me?
Right. Yeah.
Does that fit who I am as a person? And so really staying conscious about who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that by making sure that you include yourself in this care journey.
Right.
So that's the teeter totter. You're attending to the needs of the other person, but you've also got to have space where your needs get attention.
Right.
May not be depending on the condition as to, the condition that you're caring for this person with.
Right.
That person may not physically or emotionally be able to give you care
Right.
in return. So it has to come in from another space. But you have to remember that your care is important too, so
Right.
that you can have enough care in yourself to be able to continue caring for this other person.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's the core of it, right? And that's what I keep telling people over and over and over. It's just find ways to prioritize yourself, because I think that's easy to put off when you're in these situations, right? Not think about it, or because there's so much always going on. But the more you can prioritize yourself, the better you can show up for other people. Whether that's the emotional work, physically making sure you're working out, taking care of yourself, whatever you can do to just help yourself is probably the best thing that you can ever do for anybody else that you're caring for. And I think that's the main motivator for a lot of people, is wanting to care for them, for others. So it kind of turns into this continuous loop, right, of self-improvement to help other people. And I think that in and of itself is the biggest journey and the biggest part of caregiving, is just learning all of it. So
Including yourself.
mhm.
You are an integral part of this care relationship. I'm going to
Mhm.
date myself with a reference that I'm going to make. You're not just a Pez dispenser where you're just spitting out care.
Yes, I love that analogy
You
that you gave last time we
are
talked.
in this relationship too.
Mhm.
And so you have to stay full in order to be able to continue caring.
Right, right. That's like the most important thing you can do. Well, I appreciate you coming on to talk with me today, and I definitely learned a lot from what you shared. And appreciate you being willing to share your story, and would love to, be able to share all of this with people as well, because I think that it's a hard skill, but I really like the way that you paint these analogies and you kind of pull on experiences from your own life. So I definitely think people should check out your book that you've written, and be able to follow along with things that you've done as well. I can tell that it's come from a good place of experience, and a lot of things that have taught you just how to improve and be better and to show up for the people that you care for. So I really appreciate your willingness to be able to share these stories and experiences with other people.
Absolutely. There's the book. And if you want some just day-to-day thoughts on navigating being a family caregiver, you
Yeah.
can tune in to my blog, which is on my website, www.praxisforcare.com, and just hear some thoughts
Yeah.
and
No,
hear
of
more
course.
about my shareable Sherryisms.
Yes, no, I love all of them. All of your things that you've shared have been so wonderful. Well, was there anything else that you kind of wanted to touch on today, or any other thoughts you kind of wanted to add to close?
Yeah, there's one thing I want to say, and I just want to it's just sort of a wrap up.
Yeah.
You are important. You are important. You are an integral part of the care relationship. So you must include yourself.
Yes. No, I love that. I think that's the most important thing you could take away from all of this. If it's just take care of yourself, and remember that it's a two-way relationship, even as much as it often probably feels like a one-way relationship. There is two parts of this equation. So definitely focusing on yourself is probably the most important thing you can do. So I absolutely love that. Well, thank you again for coming on and being willing to talk with me.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Hey friend, before you go, I just wanted to remind you, you matter in this too. Not just as a caregiver, but as a real human being with needs, feelings, and a life that deserves care too. I know how easy it is to get caught up in everything you're doing for someone else, but like we talked about today, it is not just about what you give, it's about what you carry with you through it all. And you deserve to carry peace, you deserve to feel proud of how you've shown up, and you deserve to not lose yourself along the way. So, whatever today looks like for you, I hope you can find one small moment to come back to yourself, because you're doing the best you can, and that is absolutely enough. If this episode meant something to you, feel free to share it with someone who might need it too, and I'll talk to you next time.